Welcome to the renowned gamer series that we're running for the Guildford Games Festival. I am joined by the excellent Ellie Gibson.
Hello,
Hi.
How are you?
I'm okay. I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes. I mean, it's Friday.
Yes, it is. It certainly is. It's getting closer all the time. So before we jump into questions, Ellie, why don't you just give us a brief overview of your career and love of games up until now, I guess.
Sure, I'm Ellie Gibson. My first job in games, well, I've been working in games for over 20 years now. My first job was at Sony. I used to write the manuals for PlayStation games. And then I worked for a magazine for a bit, and then I worked for Eurogamer for nearly a decade. And then I was in a TV show called Dara O'Brien's Go 8-Bit. And now I am hosting a podcast about games called Extra Life with The Guardian's Keza MacDonald.
Well, if anyone doesn't know, frankly, they should have known your history by now. But that's a perfect, succinct way to get it through. And also, the podcast with Keza sounds rad.
Yeah, it's going to be a new thing. So it's me. So Keza, I'm sure everyone knows, but she's incredibly knowledgeable about games, whereas I'm just silly about games. So I think we make quite a nice duo. Let's bring guests. We've got like Charlie Brooker and Dara O'Brien, and then we've got loads of great comedians coming on, like Sophie Duker and Jamali Maddox and people like that. So yeah, it's going to be amazing. Hopefully, well, I don't know. That's quite egotistical to say, isn't it? It's going to be a podcast.
It's going to be amazing. I can say it. It's going to be amazing. That sounds awesome. So let's take it right back to the beginning for you. So what was your either favourite childhood game or earliest gaming memory?
Oh, so I'm so old, you see, that the first sort of proper sort of machine that I owned was an Amstrad CPC 464. Now, this is so old. It was invented by Alan Sugar. He wasn't always just on The Apprentice, he used to make computers. And it was sold, it had a tape deck. I don't think you look very young, you've probably never seen a cassette. Do you know what a cassette is?
I recall them.
It's sort of like a CD with two holes. So what you had with the Amstrad is you would put the cassette in the thing and press play. You had to rewind it first. You press play, and then you would go away sort of up to 3 or 4 weeks and hope it loaded while you were gone. And then if you were lucky, you would come back and you would actually get to play a not very good video game. So that was my childhood in a nutshell. It was quite deprived. There was that, and then of course came the Great War, which I'm sure you're aware of. Sonic vs Mario. I was on the right side of history, thankfully. I was always a Sonic fan, so I shan't be judged by history. Where do you stand on that issue?
It's a tricky one for me, Ellie. Like the thing is that I had a Sega, I had a Mega Drive. That was my jam when I was at that kind of age. But as I grew up, all of my friends were like crazy for Nintendo, and then Pokemon happened, so I just ever so slowly moved over. And now you're lucky if you catch me without my Switch in my hand, frankly. That's how bad it's gone.
Drag you out. Listen, no, you're a traitor. That's what you're a traitor. We're going to drag you out into the village square, and Dr. Robotnik is going to shave your head. That's what's going to happen to you. That's all you deserve.
Does it make it any better if I add that I used to have a rabbit called Florence that was nicknamed Dr. Flabotnik?
Like an actual rabbit, a real live.
Yeah, we used to call her Dr. Flabotnik. Because they jumped out at the end. That
ameliorates it slightly. Yes. All right. You can.
Thanks.
Right. Maybe we won't shave your head. Maybe we'll just shave your legs. I don't know.
That's fine, and maybe just a few less people witnessing. That would be perfect.
We'll let you for a little bit, but you are still a traitor. Don't forget that. Nobody's going to forget that.
But I guess there was something much cooler about, that as a child, there's something cooler about a really fast hedgehog than a fat plumber.
This is what I'm saying to you. I had this argument with TV's Dara O'Brien the other day, who is a close personal friend. And he came on the podcast Extra Life. I don't know if I've mentioned it. I've mentioned it with Keza MacDonald. And he came on. And we had this very row on the podcast because he didn't actually play Nintendo and Sega at the time. He was at university trying to chat up girls. But he said that, so he comes into it as a neutral, unique observer. And he thinks that Sonic is just like, it's like a pinball machine or something. You just fire the ball and off it goes. Which is nonsense.
It's not quite that.
Sonic has to do jumps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As well.
Absolutely.
And he shits gold rings. I mean, what's not to like? That's, That's
a nice animation as well, that flyback with the rings. That's cool. I quite like that.
Exactly. Dara O'Brien knows nothing about games. Famously, he knows absolutely nothing about games. They just called it Dara O'Brien's Go 8-Bit to flatter his ego, but behind his back, they all called it Ellie Gibson's Go 8-Bit.
I
even
heard
though
that.
Steve and Sam actually invented it.
I heard that from Steve and Sam. They said it was all you, and they'd like to give you the complete credit for everything that happened there.
Absolutely. Well, that's, they're quite right. That's unusually nice of them, but yeah,
Set
I'll take
in stone.
that.
Job's a good one. So obviously, working on Go 8-Bit and the podcast being video games focused, obviously there's, a clear connection. But outside of that, how do you find that games inspire your work?
Well, because games are my work, it's sort of, I don't know, they don't inspire my comedy too much, because my other job apart from games is I'm in a comedy double act called Scummy Mummies with a woman called Helen, and she's not a big gamer really, so she gets quite bored quite quickly of me talking about video games, so that's sort of a bit separate. But I would say that games have sort of extended more into other areas of my life. Like, for example, this year I was supposed to run the marathon. And so I've been training for it for sort of over a year now. And what I realised with the training, it was quite hard at first. But then the more running I did, obviously, the better I got, and the longer I could run, the faster I could run, blah, blah, blah. And I sort of thought, oh, no, this is like a video game, isn't it? This is just a game. This is like an RPG. You just level up. You start with your couch to 5k, and then you do to 10k, and it's just like, being a mage or something. I don't know, but with trainers. So, and I found it quite helpful to think of running like that, to just think, right, I've just got to get through this level, and then I'll defeat this boss, the boss being the London Marathon, of course. But that little did I know, the actual boss, that was just a sub-boss, and the actual boss was going to be a terrible virus sweeping through the globe. So, and then my knees went as well, which was annoying, because, again, that's one of the things I like about games, is that it's, it's quite rare to have an injury, isn't it? Like, I've never been playing smash court tennis and suddenly my hamstring goes. That doesn't happen in the game. So I think, really, I can't remember why I started running now, and I didn't get to do the marathon, so I might just cancel it and play games.
I mean, it seems like a logical thing from the perspective of a woman who will never run unless she's being chased. It seems like a very logical thing to do. I say play games. Play games that involve running. Platform is perfect. Jobs are good.
Don't do exercise. Don't my children listening. No,
loads of exercise.
Video games are bad for you. Fortnite makes you go blind. I don't know if they can hear me, but just in case.
You never know. But I found that kind of notion of gamifying. I recently got diagnosed with ADHD. I've mentioned this in a previous interview. But it's meant that kind of the notion of gamifying day-to-day life to actually get through it and reward yourself for the things that you hate doing or the things that your brain finds really difficult to get its head around, or whatever it may be. It's such a nice way to kind of live life. I give myself a little treat every few days for completing all of the things that need to be completed, or whatever it may be. It really keeps you going.
Yeah, exactly. It's, and for my demographic, that treat is often a glass of wine at the end of the day, or several bottles. But I find that helpful to motivate me and get through stuff. Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, well let's cut to the question. We're here to talk about Guildford.
Thank God! Finally, you've said the elephant in the room. We've all been thinking about it. When are we going to talk about Guildford? It's the big question of 2020. Not whether Trump's going to win the election. Not when we're going to get a vaccine. What about games from Guildford?
I've had
the nuts to say it finally.
Yeah, I've had to mute Guildford on Twitter because just so many people are asking me. I just couldn't deal with it anymore.
It's
Okay.
No, but in all seriousness, it is because I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he's a bit older than me, and he's never been a gamer, and he's also from Australia, so his knowledge of video games in this country is very limited. And he was saying, "Oh, so what are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "I'm doing this chat about games and Guildford." And he's like, "Guildford? Is that games?" And I said, "Yeah." And I started listing all the great games that have come out of Guildford, Theme Park and Dungeon Keeper and Burnout and all these things, some of which he had actually heard of. And he was like, "Oh, so Guildford is like the Silicon Valley of Britain." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Stick that in your tourist information posters. You can have that as your tagline.
It's nice.
Welcome, Guildford." Yeah.
We'll propose it to the council, see how we get on. But absolutely, I mean, Guildford is a thriving games development community, and the whole point, or not the entire point. But a big part of what we're doing here is to highlight that to people, because so many people will have all of those Guildford games in their catalogue and not even realise that quite often it's the same developers or an idea that came from one that then, you know, fed onto another, and they're all kind of connected in some way or another.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go.
They've probably never even been to Guildford. They haven't realised that as you walk through the streets of Guildford, on every street corner there's someone making a video game. That's
Literally
in every
there.
single cafe. You know, people in the queue at Sainsbury's just coding furiously on their phones. Just the streets are lined with compact discs. That's Guildford all over.
Yeah, we had so many compact discs left over, and we figured we'd just line the streets with them. There's nothing else left to do in this digital age.
Exactly. Compact discs. Why did I even say it? Nobody's said the words compact discs since 1991.
I liked it. You could have gone with floppy though. It could have been worse. It's all right. I don't quite like floppy discs. All right, come on then. Favourite Guildford game and why?
Favourite Guildford game. I've got a lot of nostalgia for Dungeon Keeper, which is a great Guildford game, and I just loved it. I loved like being in charge of the mining and the gold and the little sprites, and it was quite funny, and I liked all that. But if I'm being honest, I don't know how well it stood the test of time. To be honest, I tried to play it again a few years ago, and it doesn't look great. But probably my favourite Guildford game of the contemporary era is Little Big Planet, which I just love, and I still remember very clearly seeing it for the first time at the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, and it was 2007, I think. And so as a game journalist, at these conferences, you see loads and loads of games, and a lot of them are very samey, and you get a bit like... And I remember seeing Little Big Planet and just my jaw dropping, because, first of all, it was a platformer, and especially at that time, people weren't really making platforms, they were a bit old-fashioned. And I love platforms, I love Sonic, and I may have played some Mario games, so I was very excited as a platform, but also it was just so beautiful, and it just looked gorgeous and fun and welcoming and exciting, and I just loved that they'd sort of taken the classic platforming mechanics and then put all this sort of really creative stuff in it. And also I think it's a very British game. Like, I'm not sure that game could have come out of any other country, not just because it's got Stephen Fry in it, who obviously really should be king. There's something about the sort of homemade, handmade, crafty, artsy feel of it that I think is very British. And I'm by no means a patriot, but that game sort of makes me feel like, oh, games are coming home, they're coming home, even though they were obviously invented in Japan. That's probably
let's write the song. Let's write the song. I'm up for that.
So yeah,
I completely understand what you're saying, and I think that, you know, like you said, the homemade feel of it and look of it, and once you're in the game, it all feels like the textures that you're seeing. But also Stephen Fry, he is like putting on a big woolen jumper anyways. So hearing his voice, oh mate, the opening. Even like when you're going through and just learning how to play the game, even those little tiny... I just love it. I love that game to pieces.
It's the game equivalent of when your mum makes your Heinz tomato soup with buttered white toast and grated cheese, which I make for my children now. They're not very grateful, but it's like that. Yeah, it's like that.
You're absolutely right. Excellent choice. I think I probably would have chosen the same. So let's do... What would be your most, I don't want to say adored, but your kind of best gaming memory, whether that's with friends or family or, whatever that was, but a big kind of Stephen Fry-like jumper feeling.
There've been so many over the years. I do remember the first Tomb Raider game having a huge impact on me, because like all women of a certain age, Lara was an icon for me because she was all we had, of course. It's not because she was particularly feminist. I mean, she's got enormous knockers. Yeah. She barely says anything. She's not Jermaine Greer, let's be honest. But, it was her. If it's her or Princess Peach or Cream the Rabbit, what's she going to go with? So I have a soft spot for Lara, and I love the moment where the T-Rex comes out of the... That was genuinely terrifying when I played that. But also I remember... In that same game, do you remember the St Francis Folly level where you had to get to the top of this sort of Escher-like structure, and it was impossibly hard, and it was like you had to do like 14 incredibly difficult, intricate jumps and get them all pixel perfect. And when you finally did it, it was like, it felt like you'd honestly climbed Everest. In fact, I don't need to climb Everest now because I've done that. So there's that. And then, but sometimes though, it's not actually the sort of beating the boss or the reaching the finish line. It's things like I played a lot of famous Guildford game. Happily, what a happy coincidence! I played a lot of Burnout Paradise.
Wonderful.
Which was obviously the open world Burnout. We got to go around and sort of pick which missions you wanted to do, and but what I loved was that you could put your own CDs in. You could put your own soundtrack into the game. Because generally I'm not a big fan of racing game soundtracks. It tends to be quite jangly guitars and men shouting. So I remember putting in like a Sugar Babes album, because we had albums in those days. That was the days. And putting in a Sugar Babes album and like just driving from one sort of mission to another and just cruising down the highway with the sun setting and just listening to like Cheryl and her mates talking about calling the shots or whatever it was. And it was just a happy moment. Yeah.
It's really, I mean, the juxtaposition, I think, is what I enjoy about that the most. Just those lovely kind of dulcet Sugar Babes, all of the harmonies, and then Burnout.
Every time I hear that songs from that Sugar Babes album, I just think of Burnout Paradise and go off into a little reverie. It's very nice. I love that.
Honestly, I'm going to find a way to play it and get that all over it. Absolutely. Biggest gaming achievement, what would that be?
Well, I've got a confession to make for you here. So as I say, I'm a professional games journalist. I've been in the industry over 20 years. I've written manuals, I've been on TV shows. I'm hosting a podcast called Extra Life with Kes MacDonald. I don't know if I've mentioned it. And I have actually completed very few games. I would say probably less than 20, if I'm being completely honest. Because the games are, A, they're very difficult often, at least if you're me. But B, they're so long, especially The Witcher is, 7,000 hours long or something. I'm going to die one day. I haven't got time for that. Do you know? Although, actually, that is about how long it takes my husband to do a poo. So, yes, I've actually probably completed in my life, in my 2 decades of working and 4 decades of playing games, I've probably completed less than 20 games.
I don't think there's any shame in it. It shows that you understand there's something else that I need to be looking at. I've given this my time. I've got to move on. That's cool.
Well, I love games. I love all different games. I love your Burnouts, and I like your platformers, and I like all. So I've got time. That's my excuse. But I have completed Donkey Kong Country on the SNES.
Excellent choice.
Complete that in the 90s, and to complete that game, I don't know if you know this, it's not just 100%. You have to collect all the things. Obviously, you have to get all the bananas and all the secret bits. Not just 100%, you have to get 101%. You have to achieve a mathematical impossibility to complete that game. And I bloody did that. So frankly, that's my proudest achievement, not just in terms of games, but in terms of life. And I've had 2 babies, so yeah.
I think it should be up there, frankly. I love the idea. Like, I'd like to know what was going on. What was the like thought process? Okay, guys, and then we're going to ask them to 100% it, and they're done. No, wait.
Yeah.
101.
100%.
Like what?
Forget it. 100%. That's something
that's for losers.
Sega would do. Screw that with their 100%. Oh, we believe in the laws of maths. Fuck you, Sega. 101%, bitches.
Damn right.
That's exactly how the head of Rare sounded. I'm sure.
100%. Yeah. And you know what? They've kept that ethos through everything they've done. God, I love those guys. If you could invite any 3 gaming characters to dinner or brunch or mimosas, I don't mind, who would they be?
Can it be I quite like a lunch that starts quite early, like about 11:30 with a cocktail, but goes on till sort of 1 a.m.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
So a very, very long lunch. Okay, now let's think. Now, sort of instinctively, I want to go for the characters that I know and love, like Sonic, but Sonic would be incredibly irritating, I think, in person, and I don't know if I want to have a long lunch with him. Although I don't like all the waggy finger, and the smugness.
Yeah, it wouldn't be appreciated when you're trying to get a meal ready and the guy's tapping at his watch. I mean, hardly.
No, I don't think. And he doesn't really speak in the games much, does he? Thank God. But I think in the cartoon he's incredibly irritating. You feel like he'd want to talk to you about Brexit at a very high speed for about 6 hours. I don't think I could handle that. Don't think I could do Brexit Sonic. Brexit the Hedgehog. That would be a game. So actually maybe not him. And again, maybe Pac-Man, but he just eats everything. And again, not a great conversationalist.
Yeah, noise might get a bit much as well.
So I think it would have to be Lara because she is an icon, you know, and she wouldn't talk too much because, of course, in the first games, all she ever said was no. If you had the wrong key, no. Or she made a bubbly noise when she drowned. So she'd be quite nice if you wanted to be a bit low key. And then probably again one of my favourite games, Uncharted. I'd probably invite Nathan Drake because let's be honest, he's funny. He's quite a funny lad, and he's quite hot, isn't he?
Yeah,
I would. Yeah, he's all right. He's all right. But then thinking about it, I worry that because Nathan and Lara have got quite a lot in common, both in terms of their jobs and just sort of culturally, I worry that they would sort of work together. I think I'm going to go with Sackboy because he's so cute, isn't he? He's just, I mean, he's cuter than one of my children. I shan't say which one, but I think I'd want Sackboy while Nathan and Lara sort of sneaked off to have a little snog in the kitchen. I would want Sackboy there to give me a little cuddle to make me feel a bit better. So yeah, I'm going to go, Sackboy for my final guess.
I like that. I like that you went with cute to compensate for whatever, you know, might be going on at the other end of the table. That's sweet. I like that. It works out well.
Well, there comes a point where you have to decide whether you want to not get married or compensate. That's
Sackboy it is.
There's a life lesson for you there.
Okay, so you wake up tomorrow morning, Ellie, and you are a game developer. What do you do? I mean, not as like, don't freak out. Panic.
Throw up. Just vomit everywhere because that sounds absolutely terrifying. That's my worst nightmare. That's like one of those nightmares where you turn up at an exam and you haven't revised. Because I'd be a terrible game developer. There's a reason I'm not a game developer, you know. And it's like that, you know, that it's like that thing of that old saying, which I don't subscribe to, by the way, that those who can't do teach and those who can't teach PE. No, I didn't make that up. I'm not going to go at teachers. Teachers are angels sent from heaven, as I discovered during lockdown when I was trying to homeschool my feral children. I love teachers. But my point is, games journalists don't make games because we can't. We're not clever enough. The people who make games are very clever. Like I don't understand coding or programming or what the difference between those things is. So it's much easier, isn't it, to critique somebody else's work, to have a go at something than to actually create something. So I'd be a terrible game developer, to be quite honest.
See, the thing is, I was thinking about this because initially, you know, of course, journalists are just important as everything else that happens within the industry, and we all feed each other. I was thinking about it. Being a journalist in itself, I reckon, because you're immediately sharing your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own views, right, about whatever media it is.
About something someone else has thought up and created, yes.
I wonder if that would mean that if you were a game dev, you wouldn't have what so many of us suffer with, which is imposter syndrome, because you've got that confidence, just be like, this is how I feel, this is what I think. Go with it.
Oh, no, everyone's got imposter syndrome.
Okay, that's good to know.
My God, you should hang out with more comedians who have got imposter syndrome. Jesus. Yeah, no, I don't think that's specific to game devs.
That's so interesting.
I think imposter syndrome with game journalists, though, we have another layer of it as well, because we always have the secret knowledge that we don't really have a real job. It's not a real job, game journalism. It's not proper. I've been at enough dinner parties where they go, what do you do? And you go, oh, I'm a journalist. And they go, oh, like political or financial? And you go, video games. And they look at you like you get their head tilt, like, is that a job? Do you get paid for that? Is that a real job? You're like, no, not really. You're right, it's not. So, I think, you could do the hard bit. I'll just keep, slagging it off.
I just work alongside the ones that do the hard bit. I'm very lucky. I'm somewhere in between. Okay, let's just... I'm gonna let you go, I promise. The night is drawing in, and I'm sure we all have a glass of wine to have at some point. Which Guildford studio, past, present, current, future, something that's on the precipice, perhaps, who knows, would you want to work with? Is there a specific project that you would have wanted to work on? And you can imagine that you're a game dev. You don't need to think about what.
Okay, imagine I've got any skill at all when it comes to game development. Okay, fine. Well, obviously, I'd definitely, if I was a skilled game developer, I'd definitely head for Guildford. I mean, no one wants to live in Kyoto. Actually, anyway, no, let's just say I'd go to Guildford. I'd definitely go to Guildford, not America or anything. Definitely not America, actually. But anyway, So yes, if I was a game developer, I would actually like to be the head of Criterion Studios.
Very nice.
Because I'm guessing as well, but if you're the boss of the studio, you don't have to do a lot of the actual practical work again, do you, right?
Yeah, more than likely. I'll let you know when I get there.
You just have a whiteboard, right? You just have a whiteboard and you just write things on there and then people go away and make it a game. Is that how that works?
And you're a bit George Costanza. You just tell everyone you're really busy all the time. Jobs are good.
Exactly.
And you get through the whole day. Yeah.
Yeah, just wear a series of jackets. So I would do that. So I picked Criterion because, as I said, I love the Burnout games, and I could get on board with that. But also, I would bring back a Criterion game called Black. Did you ever play that?
What a game.
Yeah, so it was 2006, wasn't it? And it was sort of like, the idea was a shooter, and I don't normally like shooters. I find it very fiddly. I can't be hiding behind crates. I find all that very, very tedious. I once got stuck in Gears of War for 40 minutes because I couldn't get through a door, but I was incredibly drunk. So, yes, I would bring back Black, because Black was this super fast, fun shooter with these sort of burnout-y mechanics, where it was a bit more sort of crash and bash, and you could get away with being a little bit rubbish, and I loved that. And I never really understood why I didn't get a proper sequel. So I would bring back that, but to update it, and I'd bring in my experience of Burnout Paradise, and I would make all the characters, I'd make the narrative of Black that you are trying to get into the latest iteration of the Sugar Babes. And that means obviously you have to shoot all of the previous Sugar Babes, which, as we know, there are about 475. So you'd have to get through all of them, and then you face Keisha and Mutya at the end, and they let you know whether or not you're in the band. That would be my game. I might pitch that, actually. I think that's quite good.
I think you should. And I think the only way to do it, I mean, assuming it's still there, it's been a long time since I've been welcomed into the inside of EA, but I remember being there many, many years ago, and there is a black meeting room that is, the walls are covered in replica guns, just covered, like, wall to wall. I want you to pitch that game in that room with the 2 original members of the Sugar Babes with you. Just letting the whole thing rip.
And I've been told that I could pass for Siobhan in my time.
You could,
but then my comedy partner also tells me I look like a young Bob Geldof. So take of those which you will.
Don't have any of it, Ellie. Don't have any of it. Ellie, thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us and imparting your passion and knowledge about video games. It was very much appreciated.
Passion, certainly. Knowledge is a strong word, but anyway, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Not at all, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Yes, hope so.